It's Halloween and you see the Reese's sitting on the counter and you've been craving them all day and you keep trying to ignore the craving, but eventually the craving gets the best of you and you start thinking, okay, I've been good all day. I'm just gonna let myself have one piece. And so you eat the one piece and you think, that really wasn't satisfying. I'll just have one more piece. And you eat that piece and it still didn't hit the spot. So you think, okay, maybe just half a piece more. And so you eat that half. And then you end up eating half of the half, and then you end up eating, like, you keep taking off bits and pieces, and then you've ate that whole Reese's, and then you keep eating more and more and more because it's not satisfying. And before you know it, you've eaten like half the bag or the whole bag, and now all this shame and this guilt start flooding in, and you think, okay, well, I've already screwed up my diet today. I might as well keep going. I might as well keep eating all this candy because tomorrow diet restarts and there's no more candy for me ever again. And I'm going to make up for eating all of this food by working out really hard or skipping meals. And the whole cycle restarts all over again on Monday. Yeah, how many years are we going to go through this? Hey sisters, it's Kirsten here with Todos Wellness, and whether or not you celebrate Halloween, for most adults, the scariest part of Halloween are the candy cravings and the inevitable shame that follows. Now, I'm going to be doing a whole separate video on how to make it through the entire holiday season without turning it into an all-out binge fest, without constantly restricting and having all these food thoughts, without essentially making the holidays miserable because you're so consumed with food, cravings, binging, whatever else it might be, and then ending up restarting everything January 1st only to end up in the exact same spot you do every single holiday season. But today we're going to be focusing specifically on Halloween cravings. I used to binge eat anytime there was a holiday, a celebration, or really anything off routine. I felt completely out of control. So if that's for you, you're going to want to stick around until the end because we're going to get controversial today. So here are my top 5 tips for making it through Halloween without constant and obsessive food thoughts and cravings, without binging, and without restricting. Let's go. Number 1 is probably the most important. Start allowing yourself to eat candy all year long. You heard me right. Restriction will lead to either binging, overeating, or uncontrollable food thoughts and cravings. Not only have I experienced this, but all of my clients have experienced this, and now we have all been able to find food freedom where we used to binge and restrict, and now we don't do either. And more research supports this as well. In fact, in diets where food is restricted, you are 133% more likely to overeat the food that you restrict. Now, I know a lot of people are going to come at me with, well, I feel addicted to food or I feel addicted to sugar, so I have to restrict it. Actually, you do not. And I even recorded an entire video on sugar addiction. I haven't uploaded it yet, but once I do, I will link it down in the description. But just know that food restriction will actually make what feels like food addiction worse. When you start labeling food as good or bad, or I can't have that food is off limits to me because it's bad, or because I'm afraid of weight gain, or I'm trying to lose weight, or I'm trying to be good, your brain is automatically going to deem that food as scarce, and it's going to fixate on it that much more. It doesn't matter if it's a cucumber or a chocolate chip cookie. Food scarcity and your brain do not mix. Your brain sees food scarcity as a threat. This is why when you finally allow yourself to eat the food that you've been restricting, you feel completely out of control because your brain thinks, well, we never get this food and I don't know when we're going to get this food again, so I need to eat as much as possible. Food restriction is one of the things that can actually lead to feeling like you are addicted to that food. You have to create an abundance mindset around candy. Now, that doesn't mean you're eating candy whenever you want, however much you want, as often as you want, and you just end up binging on candy all the time. Although, trust me, you would probably get tired of the candy. But it does mean we need to get rid of the scarcity mindset around whatever it is you feel like is totally off limits to you because of what diet culture has told you. I used to be caught in the binge restrict cycle. Y'all, I used to binge so heavily that I would make myself physically ill. Now that I no longer restrict any foods and I give myself permission to eat candy throughout the year, I have not one single time binged on anything. I can keep candy in my pantry, hardly ever think about the candy. And the few times that I do crave the candy, I allow myself to eat that candy. I give myself permission. I can eat 1 or 2 pieces, feel completely satisfied, have no shame, no guilt, and then just move on with the rest of my day. That never happened when I was restricting food. My clients experience the exact same thing when they heal their relationship with food and stop restricting. Now, I could do a whole video on food restriction and food morality, but to keep this one short, give yourself permission to eat candy more frequently throughout the year, and I guarantee you will find yourself eating less total candy in the entire year than when you try to restrict and inevitably end up either binging on it, or even if you don't binge on candy, you're probably at the point where you're constantly fighting off candy cravings and you cannot live in the present moment. That is no way to live. Number 2, eat enough during the day. Most people who are actively trying to lose weight or who are actively dieting are not eating enough. If you are not eating enough, biology is going to kick in. Your body is going to work against your efforts, and you will have stronger cravings, especially carb and sugar cravings. It's not a matter of willpower, it is a matter of biology and psychology. I am not kidding you when I tell you that at least half of all my chocolate cravings are simply because I am hungry. I, like clockwork, get chocolate cravings around 3 o'clock in the day, and it's because it's been maybe 3 or 4 hours since I've eaten my last meal and I legitimately need more food. So I will give myself a fairly large snack, large enough to feel full and satisfied, that's protein, carb, and fat, and that craving will go away. However, when I was dieting, usually those snacks would not fit into my diet, or they wouldn't fit into my calorie or macro goals for the day. So I would ignore and repress my hunger. I was working against my body, and my body responded negatively. This is why now I don't diet. I honor my hunger. I eat intuitively, and I have learned to interpret my cravings, and I teach my clients the same thing. We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. Number 3, eat mindfully. I personally think that we hold so much guilt and shame around certain foods that when we decide to let ourselves eat that food, that we feel so much guilt and shame that we actually try to dissociate from the process of eating it. Like, if I don't acknowledge that I'm eating this and I don't pay attention to the fact that I'm eating this, then maybe I didn't actually eat it. Like, maybe I can dissociate from the guilt and the shame that I feel by dissociating from this eating experience. That's not how that works. You end up still feeling ashamed, and you end up not feeling satisfied. Take that piece of candy, unwrap it, smell it, look at it, and when you bite into it, pay attention to all the flavors, all the textures. Really savor that candy and be grateful. Be grateful for that candy. Thank God for that candy. Invite God into that experience. I had a client that used to struggle with binging on the weekends exclusively, and mindful eating was one of the most important things that she started implementing that was actually the most effective at helping her end her weekend binging. And the number one thing that she said helped the most was inviting God into all of her eating experiences. I think we hold so much shame with food that, by the way, Jesus declared clean. We hold so much guilt and shame around certain foods that we don't want to invite God in on those experiences because we think we are sinning when we eat a cookie. You are not sinning. You can actually eat that cookie with gratitude and mindfulness and invite Christ into that experience, and it's going to be so much better than trying to secretly and shamefully eat this cookie in a way that's not satisfying at all. The thing you have to remember is if you're restricting food, or you're not eating enough food, or you have food morality, it's going to be really, really difficult to eat mindfully. So you got to make sure you're doing tips 1 and 2 as well. Tip number 4, stop fearing sugar. Like I mentioned before, did an entire video on sugar addiction and how sugar actually is not inherently addictive. Now, if that seems really controversial and you're about to talk about all the rat studies, I cover all of that in this video. So again, I will link the video. I'm not going to get too much into this because I already did a whole video on sugar addiction and sugar cravings, but just know that your fear of sugar is likely contributing toward your feelings of addiction with sugar. I can tell you, when I was eating perfectly clean and was not eating any sugar, my health was far worse than it is now. Not because sugar made me healthier, but I've healed my relationship with sugar. I don't have so much fear and anxiety around food anymore. I have a lot more peace. I can eat sugar without freaking out about it, without inducing a stress response. And that has been healing for me. Now that I include sugar into my diet, I don't binge on it. I don't eat unlimited amounts of sugar in the sense that all I eat is ice cream and cookies and popsicles all day, every single day. But now that I allow sugar into my life intuitively, without restriction, I am far healthier mentally, physically, and spiritually than I was when I was trying to completely eliminate sugar. And finally, number 5, learn to interpret your cravings, y'all. This one is huge. So many people, when they start intuitive eating or when they stop dieting, they forget that you also have to build attunement with your body. You can't just stop dieting and give yourself unconditional permission to eat, where you're eating whatever you want, whenever you want, with no regard to building attunement with your body. We have to remember that all cravings are messengers from your body communicating some form of a need. So if you just impulsively and immediately give into that craving, you're probably not going to meet the need, which is why when you end up impulsively eating food, it doesn't feel satisfying because it's likely not meeting the need. So you feel like you need more and more and more because your body's like, hey, this need isn't getting met. So the craving never goes away. So you just keep eating more and you never feel satisfied. But on the flip side, if all you do is try to ignore your cravings because you think your cravings are bad, they aren't. They're very helpful messengers. They are your friends. But if you have this idea that cravings are bad, you need to ignore your cravings, suppress your cravings, distract from your cravings, like, oh, I got a craving. Every time I get a craving, I go for a walk. That's not going to work long term if you're not getting to the root of why that craving is present in the first place. Going for a walk might work if you have a craving because you've been sedentary and your body's craving movement and it's showing up as a chocolate craving. That happens to me. But it's not going to work if you're feeling exhausted because you didn't get enough sleep. Because you don't need a walk, you need more sleep. So whether or not you give into the craving impulsively or you try to restrict the craving, distract from the craving, repress and ignore the craving, either way, you're likely not meeting the need. Either way, it's not going to feel satisfying. The craving's not going to go away. And you're going to end up thinking, what the heck is wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. You just haven't been taught how to honor your body's signals. By the way, you will not be able to interpret your craving if you're not following any of the other tips. If you're afraid of sugar, you're not going to be able to interpret that craving because fear is going to get in the way of that attunement. If you're not eating mindfully, if you're restricting food, if you're bringing in food morality, if you're not eating enough food, it's going to feel impossible to build that attunement to nourish your body by interpreting your cravings. All those other things have to be in place before you are able to then interpret your cravings. There you have it, ladies. I promise if you are able to implement these 5 tips while healing your relationship with food and bringing Christ into the picture, then by this time next year, you're not going to be binging on Halloween candy. You're not going to be restarting your diet on Monday. You're not going to be starting a brand new weight loss New Year's resolution. You're not going to be overwhelmed with constant cravings and food thoughts. In fact, I remember just last year around Halloween, one of my clients came to me and she was really struggling with Halloween because she found herself binging on the Halloween candy. This year, I did a survey on Instagram and she took that survey and she said she no longer struggles with Halloween candy. That could be you this time next year, if not sooner. If you're looking for a program that provides coaching, accountability, support, and a step-by-step solution to helping you heal your relationship with food and body in a Christ-centered way, where I teach you actionable ways to implement tips like we just talked about today, where I teach you how to actually interpret your cravings in a way that isn't restrictive or overwhelming, while also being able to nourish your body consistently, then head over to my website, totuswellness.com. It's linked down below, or book your free no pressure discovery call to see how I can help. Both are linked down in the description. If you liked this video or found it helpful, be sure to share it and click that thumbs up. It helps me get these videos out to more people who are struggling just like you. And be sure to stay tuned and subscribe to see my upcoming videos on sugar addiction and how to handle your kids' sugar cravings. God bless, and we'll see you next time.